Hi, and welcome back to the Red Zone Warriors Fantasy Football Show. I am your host, as always, Rob the Commish Smith, and here with my co-host, Jay Cushman Corsel. How's it going today, Cushman?
It's going well. Getting over my loss from last week in fantasy football. Thanks, Adam Asshole Schefter, for not mentioning that Jay Cutler and Alshon Jeffrey were going to play last week. Dick.
Yeah, after especially saying they were 75% likely to not play, a little late on that turnaround there. So, all right, everybody, please remember to tweet us all your fantasy football questions at Red Zone Warriors. All right, Jay, let's get right to it now. What do you have for us that's going on around the NFL that we need to know about?
All right, well, everybody's talking about Adrian Peterson these days. Adrian Peterson, Ray Rice, Adrian Peterson, Ray Rice. Let's talk about Adrian Peterson for a second. The Vikings, with the encouragement of the NFL and a lot of advertising sponsors, have officially placed Adrian Peterson on the exempt commissioner's permission list, which means that Peterson has to stay completely away from the team until his personal legal situation is resolved. He is out indefinitely. So all of you people who took Adrian Peterson in the first, I am sorry. I truly am. But that's the way she goes, boys. It's the fucking way she goes. Jamal Charles injured his ankle this week. Coach Andy Reid said the injury isn't severe, but has, quote, high ankle sprain components, unquote. Not so sure on the timetable for his return. Niall Davis filled in very nicely versus the Broncos in Week 2, and it doesn't really alter the Chiefs' game plan at all. But again, people who drafted Jamal Charles early, like the commission I, are going to suffer a little bit possibly. Niall Davis may or may not put out the kind of output that you expected from Jamal. Excuse me. He did last week. We'll see what happens going forward. One of the reasons I lost this week, RG3 dislocated his ankle. He will be out several weeks, and it's possibly a season-ending injury depending on the ankle, and most likely depending on the play of one Michigan State alumni, Kirk Cousins. Many people in the organization feel that Cousins is the better quarterback, and he fits the offense better, and he's definitely got a plethora of weapons at his disposal, so we'll see what he can do. A.J. Green does not have a long-term injury. Did you just hear that collective sigh of relief? I sure did. Speaking Monday, Bengals coach Marvin Lewis said A.J. Green's toe-foot issue is not a long-term injury. He didn't elaborate on A.J.'s Week 3 status, though. The Bengals official website reported Sunday evening that quote, indications are that Green will return following the Week 4 bye. We won't rule him out for Week 3 just yet, however. At the latest, Green's status will be updated when the Bengals return to practice on Wednesday. Ben Tate. Ben Tate. This was the fear everybody did have with him as a starting running back. He is probably out for 3 weeks. Speaking at Monday's presser, the Browns coach Mike Pettine said Ben Tate probably, quote, again, he's, quote, probably, won't return for Week 3. Almost all signs suggest that there is no probably about it, and that Tate won't suit up against the Ravens. Tate hinted last week that he's targeting a return after the Browns' Week 4 bye. Terrence West filled in admirably for the Saints, and he will remain in the running back 2 conversation as long as Mr. Ben Tate is sidelined. So that's it for the news and notes this week. Back to you there, Rob.
All right, yeah, hopefully Ben Tate is out for a bit, as I have Terrence West in many of my leagues. All right, so we're going to do what we did last week, and we're going to do a quick recap of all 16 games in Week 2, just to let everyone know kind of who did what, who's performing well, who's performing badly, and so forth. So, Jay, you're going to get us started out today with the first game of the week, which was last Thursday, which was the Steelers versus the Ravens.
All right, yeah, well, let's get right into it. Obviously, the Steelers took a loss here, 26-6 by the Ravens. What we're really interested in, though, is the fantasy aspects of this game. Ben Roethlisberger, decent, 217 yards, no touchdowns, though, so not a great day, and an interception for him. Le'Veon Bell continues to do well. 11 carries, 59 yards, 5 catches for 48 yards. They're using the guy a lot. Antonio Brown is still a beast, even though he catches no touchdowns. The guy has a couple runs for 10 yards and 7 catches for 90 yards. Marcus Wheaton did not show up as much this week, 5 catches for 38 yards. And Heath Miller was kind of disappointing as well. On the other side of the ball, Flacco, 21 to 29, 160 yards. Here's the big kicker, though, 2 touchdowns for Flacco, putting him definitely in a place where people, if they happen to have played him, which I really can't see having happened before this week, we're happy. Bernard Pierce, 22 for 96, not terrible. Steve Smith Sr., again, 6 for 71 yards, not a bad day. Dennis Pitta only had 3 catches for 30 yards. Owen Daniels was the hero at the tight end position this week, folks. 5 catches, 28 yards, but those 2 touchdowns were what put him over the top and probably pissed off half of the people in fantasy football because Dennis Pitta is highly owned. To be honest with you, people, stay away from Owen Daniels. I'm not real convinced that he's going to catch a lot of balls and a lot of touchdowns. I think that was just, he happened to be in the right place at the right time this week. Dennis Pitt is still the guy over in Baltimore. Rob?
Yeah, this happens time to time. It's unfortunate. Pitt is definitely the guy to have there. Owen came out of the gate slow. The thing is about Owen Daniels is he knows that offense. The coaching staff knows him from when he came over. But the reality is Dennis Pitt is the much better athlete and definitely the play moving forward. All right, so we're going to move on to my Denver Broncos beating their AFC rival, the Chiefs, 24-17. And folks, this was much closer than it should have been, which is giving me pause on this revamped Denver offense, to be honest with you. But so we'll start with the Denver side of the ball. Peyton Manning, well, he does what Peyton Manning does. He threw 3 touchdowns 2 weeks in a row. 21 for 26, extremely efficient, 242 yards, averaging 9.3 yards a pass. So he definitely got it done, as he does for his fantasy owners. The other guys he's targeting big time on this offense are same guys he targeted last week, frankly. Emmanuel Sanders has actually been the most heavily targeted Denver Bronco pass catcher in the offense through 2 games at least. I think that will subside, but that's the way it's been thus far. He was targeted 9 times, had 8 catches for 108 yards. So he's obviously getting it done too. Wes Welker is supposed to be coming back this week as his suspension was reduced by the NFL. So we'll see how that pans out. I think that's going to affect, of course, both of their numbers. Demaryius Thomas rebounded from his bad play last week with his drops. Was targeted 7 times, had 5 catches for 62 yards and a score. And Julius Thomas, well, he left off right where he left off. 4 catches for 39 yards, but he also received a touchdown. So it wasn't the big game he had the week prior, but he still got that touchdown, salvaged his fantasy value on the day. Monte Ball still struggling a little bit. He had 12 carries for 60 yards. So it is, 5 yards a carry. That's a pretty good average, frankly. Just didn't get a ton of carries in this one, and only had 3 receptions for 29 yards. But stick with Monte Ball. I still think he's going to be fine. And it seems clear as day that T.J. Anderson is the handcuff or C.J. Anderson, I'm sorry, for Monte Ball moving forward, and not so much Mr. Ronnie Hillman. On the Chiefs side of the ball, as the Cushman had mentioned in the first quarter there, man, Jamal Charles, after 2 carries, 4 yards, he goes down with what they're calling not so bad, quote unquote, high ankle sprain. So we'll see how long he'll be out. That really crushed his fantasy owners. But I guess the good news here, if anything, is that Niall Davis did come in. He did look great, 22 carries for almost 80 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was also active in the passing game with 6 catches for 26 yards. So he got it done. So if you are a Jamal Charles owner, it did hurt you last week, but hopefully, like we were recommending, you picked up Niall Davis as I did in all the leagues that I own Charles, and you can put him right in this coming week. So outside of that, Travis Kelce is getting a little bit more involved. Dwayne Bowe sucks as usual. They both had 6 targets. Kelce had 4 catches for 81 yards in this one.
All right, we're going to move on. Dolphins-Bills, an AFC East matchup. The Bills walked away with this one 29-10. The Dolphins are not looking all that great, folks. Ryan Tannehill, 31 of 49, 249 yards, a touchdown and a pick. You know, pretty typical day for him. Lamar Miller took over for the injured Noshan Moreno. 11 carries, 46 yards, no touchdowns. Not all that impressive. Mike Wallace, 5 for 56 and a touchdown, and that's pretty much the only thing to say of any note, really, out of the Dolphins offense in their receiving core. It was not a great day for the Dolphins, obviously. They lost, and their guys just didn't put up very good performances. Other side of the ball, E.J. Manuel, 16 of 26 for 202 yards and a touchdown. Much better day than Tannehill. C.J. Spiller, 12 for 69 yards. Fred Jackson, 12 for 24 yards. Obviously, C.J. was the more productive back on Sunday. Sammy Watkins, 8 catches, 117 yards, and a touchdown. The rookie finally shows up, ladies and gentlemen. And show up he did. So that's all I've got for Buffalo, Miami. Rob, back over to you.
Yeah, and just to mention, Noshan Moreno is expected to miss 4 to 8 weeks with a busted-up elbow. So they actually brought, Miller's going to get be the RB1 there moving forward until Noshan gets back. They did bring back, I should say, Daniel Thomas back to the mix simply because he knows the offense, but he's not a guy that I would be quickly trying to grab on the waiver wire. We kind of know what he is.
Also, we did hear that the Dolphins are working out LaMichael James, recently released by the 49ers. So keep an eye on that and see what happens.
Yeah. If he gets picked up, he's definitely the one I would rather grab in that situation. In fact, we already have in our FFPC league. All right, so let's move on to the Skins in Jags. So in this one, the big news was RG3. Pretty high on this guy moving into the season. Injury concerns were always a possible issue with this guy, and he goes down with a dislocated ankle, which frankly, maybe I'm alone in this, but I've never heard of dislocating your ankle. Finger, whatnot, yeah, toe, ankle, not so much. But he did. So they're saying at least the MRI and all that stuff was negative. He's not going to have required to have surgery, but he's going to be out for multiple weeks. And I guess depending on how Kirk Cousins does, whether or not we see RG3 back in the game or not. However, even with RG3 going out in this one, the Skins crushed the Jags 41-10. I got to say, Kirk Cousins came in, he played admirably, 22 for 33, 250 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Alfred Morris, a guy that we were recommending to all of our listeners to draft early and often and high, came through again, 22 carries for 85 yards, almost 4 yards a carry and 2 touchdowns. So he's coming through with scores for his fantasy owners. And from a receiving perspective, Niles Paul there, who's filling in for Reed, who's still hurt with the hamstring, filled in well, targeted 11 times, had 8 catches for 99 yards and a touchdown. So he's definitely getting the job done in Reed's absence. Outside of that, Andre Roberts had 4 catches for 60 yards, but really nothing else on the receiving end of the ball for Washington. Over to Jacksonville, Chad Henne, of course, is the guy there, at least for now. A lot of speculation that Blake Bortles is going to take over that role in the not-too-distant future. He was 14 for 28 for under 200 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Toby Gerhart, he's playing lame in this one, and his results showed it, quite frankly. He only had 7 carries for 8 yards. So he was on a bad team with a bad offensive line playing hurt. So Toby Gerhart needs to be 100% healthy and get volume for him to produce for his fantasy owners. And as of this moment in time, that is not the situation he finds himself. And from the receiving aspect for Jacksonville, Again, Allen Robinson was the most targeted receiver there with 6 targets and 4 catches for 75 yards. It's kind of a cluster in this backfield from a receiving perspective. Hearns was the big waiver wire pickup last week. I believe he went out with an injury in this one, only had 2 receptions for 13 yards. He dropped a wide open touchdown, and they saw him on crutches after the game. So for those of you who went out and snagged him, hopefully you didn't spend too much money on him or waste your first waiver wire pick on him if you had him for last week.
Yeah, I'm going to add one thing to that. This is a plea to Mr. Kirk Cousins. Look at me, right here in the eyes. My beady little eyeballs. Throw the fucking ball to Pierre fucking Garçon. Please, I'm begging you. He's the best fucking wide receiver on your team. Throw him the ball. Okay.
Yes, well, man, when Deshaun Jackson gets hurt, goes down, he actually sprained an AC joint in his shoulder. You would think Garçon, who was the most heavily targeted wide receiver and the most catches last year in the NFL, would have got like 20 targets and 14 catches. However, he got 4 targets and 1 catch. So he screwed all of his fantasy owners. Really not sure how that happened.
Yeah, this is one of them that he screwed. All right, so the Cowboys got to win this week, 26-10 over the Titans.
Who knew?
Yeah, who knew? Tony Romo, yeah, this isn't pretty. 19 of 29 for 176 yards and a touchdown. 176 yards, Tony? Wow. Jeez, dude. Now, the star of the day, or at least one of them in Dallas, was Mr. DeMarco Murray. 29 carries, 167 yards, and a touchdown. He also added 1 catch for 6 yards. Nobody else really ran the ball there. Dunbar had 11 carries for 27 yards, not really all that impressive. Dez Bryant on the receiving end here, 10 catches, 103 yards, and a touchdown. Thank you, Dez. Thank you. Jason Witten, on the other hand, only 4 catches for 32 yards. And for those of you who are hoping that Terrence Williams would be a big presence, 2 catches for 20 yards. Sorry. On to the Tennessee side. Jake Locker, 18 of 34. That is not great. 234 yards and a touchdown, 2 picks. Come on, Jake. Where's the accuracy at, bro? Sean Green had 5 rushes for 40 yards. Dexter Cluster 4 for 30. Not much going on in the rushing department for Tennessee. That is no big surprise because Sean Green sucks. Delaney Walker was a big surprise on the day. 10 catches, 142 yards, and a touchdown, which held one of my guys, Kendall Wright, to only 3 catches for 31 yards. Thanks, Delaney. Dick.
Yeah, at least Dez finally came through for his owners in this one. Unlike last week, owned the guy in a couple leagues, and he really screwed the pooch. But he came through this week. Got, like you said, 10 catches and a touchdown, 100 yards. That's what we expect from Dez. So, Dez, keep it up, please.
Yes.
All right, we're going to head over to the Arizona Cardinals playing the lowly, and I do mean lowly, 0-2 Giants, beating them without their starting quarterback, Carson Palmer, 25-14, who was sitting on the bench, really never expected to play as the word came out, because he has some nerve in his shoulder that is dead, at least temporarily. And that's a true statement, and it's also unfortunate because that truly hurt the wide receivers in this game, of which one is Mr. Michael Floyd, who we're super high on, who's a beast, who killed it last week as we expected, but only was targeted 6 times for 1 catch and 19 yards. And you might wonder why that is. Well, it's because Drew Stanton had the pigskin in his hand versus Carson Palmer. Now, I know Carson Palmer isn't a world beater, but he's definitely better than Drew Stanton at this point, and he needs to get back in the lineup sooner rather than later.
Yeah, he never played third string for the Lions, Rob.
Yeah, that's all you need to know. So luckily, Andre Ellington, who is still dealing with that foot injury, it's some sort of tendon that wraps from one place to another or something along those lines, he's playing through it. They say it cannot get worse, and his production on the field really doesn't seem to have suffered all that much. He had 15 carries in this one, in the runaway victory for 91 yards, averaging over 6 yards a carry, which is what he was doing last year. He also had one catch for 10 yards. So he's doing well for his owners, especially in a PPR. And I think after the bye week upcoming, he'll probably be closer to 100%, even have a better second half. So they did well there. Larry Fitzgerald got back into the action a little bit here. He was targeted 10 times this week. He had 6 catches for 51 yards and was a half a centimeter away from getting in the end zone. But they actually called it a touchdown, although replay showed that his knee was down. So he almost came through even better for his fantasy owners, unlike, of course, last week. On the Giants side of the ball, Eli Manning did what Eli Manning does, although he did a little bit better than he has in last week and last year, for that matter. 26 for 39, 277 yards, 2 touchdowns, and, 2 picks. Rashad Jennings, I tell you, the guys are really coming through. He's on a bad team, not a very good offensive line, but he's getting the job done. He's getting the volume. Andre Williams, who? Because that's not really working out. So Rashad had 18 carries for 64 yards, 3.6 yards a carry. Wasn't able to get in the end zone in this one, but still did well. He's also catching the ball out of the backfield. He had 4 catches for 45 yards. So he's doing you a solid if you were to spend a third, fourth round pick on Rashad Jennings. From a passing perspective, Larry Donnell. The guy's done it 2 weeks in a row. He's getting targeted more heavily than any pass catcher in that offense, believe it or not. Eli seems to rely on his tight ends. He has done that historically. He is targeted 9 times, had 7 catches for 81 yards. Victor Cruz showed up a little bit in this one, targeted 10 times for 5 catches and 60 yards. Had some drops too, because that's what Victor Cruz does. He drops 2 or 3 balls a game, which is frustrating. All right, Jay, so that is it for Arizona and New York.
All right, we'll move on to the Patriots and the Vikings. Now, obviously, the Vikings were without AP this week, and it showed. New England won this one 30-7. Tom Brady didn't have the best of days, 15-22 for 149 yards and a touchdown. The star of this game really was pretty much Stephen Ridley, 25 carries, 101 yards and a touchdown. Give the ball to Vereen, please. Please. Thank you. Vereen only had 6 carries for 40 yards, and he only added 1 catch for, 0 yards. Didn't get any yards. Julian Edelman, on the other hand, had 6 catches for 81 yards and a touchdown, as he has taken over the Wes Welker role in this offense. And Rob Gronkowski, believe it or not, was held to 4 catches for 32 yards. Not a great day for the Gronk. Over on Minnesota's side, Matt Castle, 19-36 for 202 yards and a touchdown. But get this, folks, 4 interceptions. Matt, keep playing like that. We're going to see Teddy Bridgewater real soon.
Real soon.
Matt Asiata, 13 carries for 36 yards, no touchdowns, averaged 2 yards a carry. Not great. Let's see that Jarrett McKinnon guy. Let's see what he can do now that we know that AP is going to be out for a long period of time. Cordell Patterson, 4 catches for 56 yards. Kyle Rudolph, 5 for 53. Asiata did add 5 catches for 48 yards and a touchdown. So he's definitely a good receiving back. Other than that, not much to talk about besides, the departure of Adrian Peterson here. And for those of you that have him, if Asiata or McKinnon have not been picked up yet, you might want to start looking at them on your waiver wire. Back to you, Rob.
Yeah, I was really surprised in this one that Cordell Patterson, they didn't get him the ball more, especially with AP being out, and the fact that they were down so much so often. So that I was a little bit curious that I'd get at least 2 or 3 handoffs to him out of the backfield. That didn't happen. Partly, Asiata was doing well. Although, again, don't really trust Asiata long term. I think the talent is going to win out with McKinnon behind him, so we'll just kind of see how that pans out. And frankly, Jay, on the New England side, Edelman is the only consistent producer. I mean, Gronk's going to be there at the end with his numbers. Kind of had a slow week last week because they didn't need him that much, but Edelman seems to get it done whether they're in a big win or they're way behind or whatever the case. He just gets ball after ball after ball thrown his way. So that is good to see for the Edelman owners. All right, so we're going to move the Saints and the Browns. Now, who, Jay, saw this coming? The Browns How the hell did they beat the Saints?
They scored more points.
They did indeed, and that is shocking. Shocking, shocking, because, well, their offense isn't supposed to be very good. And the Saints' offense is supposed to be very good. I think one explanation for this, which is kind of odd, but the numbers are bearing it out, the Saints, frankly, only play well at home and indoors. That's it. If you have a Saints player and they're playing away and outdoors, well, good luck to you, kind sir, because the numbers are probably not going to go in your favor. So, like I said, the Browns did win 26-24. Brian Hoyer, he's still in there. Yeah, as of today, they're 1-1 now. He was 24 for 40, 200 yards, 1 touchdown. Just kind of playing conservative, little dink and dunks, not turning the ball over. Johnny Manziel got his first NFL touch, and he went 0 for 1, and that's it. Drew Brees, on the other hand, 27 for 40, 237 yards, 2 touchdowns and an interception. Not great, but you'll take it, but you definitely expect more from Drew Brees. He has not been delivering on his fantasy value, which is another reason why we said do not select a quarterback in the first few rounds, because they're not producing as such. Mark Ingram, just about as we were about to trust you and picking you up and having the confidence to start you, maybe even more than a flex, maybe even as an RB2. Mark, you didn't let us down with your play, my friend, but you did let us down with a broken hand. That's going to have you sidelined for at least a month. Hello, Kyrie Robinson. Hello, Pierre Thomas, who you should all be owned anyway. But Kyrie Robinson will be one of the biggest waiver wire pickups this week. It's going to be him and the Thomas show moving forward. Before Mark went out of the game, he did get you 83 yards and a touchdown, so at least he didn't go out in the second play of the first quarter like Jamal Charles did to a lot of his owners.
RG3.
Yes, but Kyrie filled in well, 8 carries for 31 yards. Pierre Thomas kind of had a slow day for him, but that'll definitely pick up this coming week. From a pass-catching perspective, Jimmy Graham did what Jimmy Graham does. He had 10 catches for 118 yards and 2 touchdowns. He absolutely crushed it. Brandon Cooks, the rookie, had a much lighter week 2 than he had week 1, so we'll look for him to rebound. That could be partly as a result of Kenny Stills coming back into that offense, so he's going to be kind of a hit-or-miss play, it appears, moving forward. Over to the Cleveland side, we have Terrence West and Isaiah Crowell doing running and lots of running. West had 19 carries for 68 yards, Crowell 11 for 54. They are a ground and pound team, relying on their defense to win, and it worked for them last week. West was also able to get in the end zone. It wasn't exactly a goal line play, so we still kind of yet to see what they're going to do in those situations moving forward, but it appears, at least in the short term, that West is still the guy to have until Ben Tate gets back. As far as the pass catchers in this one, Hawkins got 12 targets, Miles Austin 10. They both had 6 catches, although Hawkins had 70 yards, but Miles Austin did get the touchdown, so they did come through. I would not feel confident picking up nor starting ever Miles Austin. I just don't trust the guy. I think Hawkins is the guy to have here. Jordan Cameron may or may not be back this week, and it's looking like Josh Gordon is going to be out for 8 to 10 weeks. The verdict is still coming down on that one. So that's it for the Browns and the Saints, Jay.
Josh Gordon, please come back to me.
Please.
Please. I really, really want you to. All right. Well, we're going to move on here. Talk about another one of the reasons that my weekend was a big pile of shit, and that is a 24-7 loss by my Detroit Lions to the Carolina Panthers. 2 cat teams here facing off against each other, and the Panthers were obviously the better team in this one. Stafford, 27 of 48. Good God, Matt, for 291 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. The rushing game was not really there. Joik Bell, 10 of 36, 10 for 36, no touchdowns. Reggie Bush, 6 for 26, no touchdowns. Calvin Johnson did Calvin Johnson's thing, 6 catches for 83 yards. didn't get a touchdown. Joik Bell had 6 catches for 61 yards, and Golden Tate 5 for 57. Eric Ebron finally showed his face, 3 catches for 38 yards. But the only person to actually catch a touchdown on the Lions was a guy named Jed Collins, who, if I'm not mistaken, is either a fullback or a tight end, and we will probably never see him catch another ball again. On the other side of the ball, Cam Newton came back this week. 22 of 34, 281 yards and a touchdown. Good on you, Cam. Jonathan Stewart carried the bulk of the balls for the rushing game in Carolina. 15 carries for 37 yards and a touchdown. Greg Olsen, like I said, this guy's going to be a top 5 tight end at the end of the year. 6 catches, for 72 yards. Jason Avant, 5 for 54 and a touchdown. And Calvin Benjamin only had 2 catches for 46 yards. So really, Cam Newton looking good. The Lions need to pull their head out of their asses. They've got too much talent on this team, too many guys that are fantasy relevant to be looking like this. A lot of people depending on Lions players for their fantasy season. So come on, boys, get your heads out of your asses. Rob?
Yeah, Jan, I got to tell you, man, even if I'm a Reggie Bush owner, I'm a little bit nervous. And even in a PPR league, I'm nervous because the Joik store is getting it done in both standard and PPR leagues, caught more balls than Bush last week. And Bush is actually healthy. So, expect him to go down at some point, but he's healthy. He's in there. He's not nearly as active as Reggie Bush. So that was an interesting one.
I did warn you.
Yeah. So let's move ahead to the Falcons and Cincinnati Bengals. So Falcons lost this one. Looked actually pretty horrible considering the thrilling victory in overtime they had last week, looking like an offensive juggernaut against the New Orleans Saints. They lost big time in this one, 24-10. So I got to say, having Matt Ryan in a couple leagues, thrilled as punch week 1. Not quite as much, a little let down here in week 2, but we're not going to freak out because that is a rookie move, as they say. Matt Ryan did end up throwing for 231 yards, 1 touchdown, but damn it, he had 3 interceptions. Not all necessarily on him, but nonetheless, that's how the score points. The points are scored and, in this case, deducted. Steven Jackson had 11 carries for 46 yards, the big rumbler, 4.2 yards a carry. Rodgers was in there. He had 5 carries for 23 yards. Matt Ryan himself actually got 28 yards rushing, so that helped a little bit to help neutralize a couple of his picks. Receiving-wise, Julio Jones showed up in this one, was targeted the most heavily on the team at 13, had 7 catches for 88 yards. And the touchdowns. He definitely came through. Roddy White, however, not quite as much. 5 catches for 42 yards. You'll take it if you have to as a wide receiver 2 on your team, but that's not what you're looking for from Roddy, although he is banged up and he has a hamstring injury he's dealing with right now on a short week, having to play Thursday. So be aware of that for all of you Roddy White owners with him playing tomorrow evening. The Cincinnati part of the ball, or side of the ball, I should say, Andy Dalton, they kind of took the ball out of his hands, which is not necessarily a bad thing, frankly. It was 15 for only 23 throws for 252 yards and 1 touchdown, but no interceptions. This was a Giovanni Bernard show, and he got it done as he does. He is looking like a top 5 running back himself, especially in PPR leagues. The guy had like 32 touches or something ridiculous, 36 maybe. He had 27 carries for 90 yards and a touchdown. And he also showed up in the receiving aspect of the game because that's what he does. 5 catches for 79 yards. I mean, the guy just killed it, almost 200 all-purpose yards for this guy. So you are thrilled to death having him on your fantasy team. We've got Jeremy Hill. He's getting a little bit more into the mix. He had 15 carries. He's averaging a whopping 4.9 yards a carry. He's looking good himself and had a rushing touchdown as well. The big injury here was to A.J. Green. he has, I actually forget that he had some sort of turf toe or foot injury of some sort. There's been different speculation out there about exactly what it is, but it doesn't seem to appear to be that bad. There's a chance he could play this coming week, they're saying, but they have a bye week also coming up here, week 4. So I think the good money is on him coming back on week 5, if we had to guess as of this moment in time. Jay?
Yeah, poor AJ Green owners. I tell you what. So we're going to move on here to the St. Louis Rams versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Rams pulled this one out in a boring thriller. Yes, I said boring thriller because it was only 19-17. Austin Davis, and in case you don't know who that is, that's the guy who's playing quarterback for St. Louis. Just letting you know.
Who?
Yeah, exactly. Was 22 of 29 for 235 yards, no touchdowns, no picks. Zach Stacy actually showed up a little bit here in this one. 19 carries, 71 yards, and a touchdown. Tavon Austin had 2 carries for 21 yards. Benny Cunningham, 6 for 15. He did not show up as much. Zach Stacy owners, you looked good this week, but we'll see what you look like next week. Now in receiving for St. Louis, Brian Quick is emerging as the number 1 receiver down there, really. 7 catches for 74 yards. Jared Cook had 4 for 46. Kenny Britt actually had a catch, ladies and gentlemen. Kenny Britt is still dead to me.
Go to hell, Kenny Britt.
Yes. Bastard. All right, Tavon Austin, 0 catches on 1 target. So not really impressive there, Tavon. Moving over onto the Tampa Bay side of the ball here, Josh McCown, 16 of 21, 179 yards, no touchdowns, and a pick. Sorry about that, Mr. McCown. It doesn't look like you're on as good of a team as you were last year. Bobby Rainey, ladies and gentlemen. Bobby Rainey, 22 carries, 144 yards. Pretty damn good. Receiving was not all that great. Obviously, the quarterback play wasn't good. Receiving play is not going to be good. Vincent Jackson, 4 catches for 51 yards. Mike Evans, 4 for 49. Not a great day. Bobby Rainey did add 3 catches for 30 yards, by the way. So he had a really, really good day. Other than that, not much fantasy relevance here besides maybe the Zach Stacy thing and the Brandon Quick thing.
Yeah, I will say Josh McCown did run in for 2 touchdowns in this one, so that definitely salvaged his day. But from a passer perspective, like you said, he is killing his owners. Although, granted, he's probably only owned in 2 quarterback leagues or super flex leagues, so he did come through from a rushing perspective to the detriment of Bobby Rainey in this one. The big question here, Jay, of course, is Doug Martin. He might very well play this week. It's still a little bit up in the air, but Bobby Rainey definitely showed that he deserved to be on the field. And Doug Martin was not a part. These coaches did not bring him in this organization. He was there when they got there. So it's hard to say, his role moving forward, if this is going to be some sort of committee situation or what. But he has not shown to be what we thought he was his rookie season. All right, so we're going to head over to the Sea Chickens losing. Thank God they lost to the Chargers 21-30. So apparently, maybe they're not the juggernaut we thought they are. Were last year, were thus far this season, but now they are 1-1, losing to the Chargers. So in this one, we have Russell Wilson, 17 for 25, 200 yards. That's pretty normal for him. He had 2 touchdowns, though, so he came through from that perspective. Percy Harvin, he did get 2 carries in this one for 45 yards and a touchdown. So he came through on that side of the ball. Not so much on the receiving end, where he was only targeted once and caught 1 ball for 5 yards. This is looking like Cordell Patterson. In fact, they're saying Cordell Patterson is just the bigger, healthier version of Percy Harvin. And when you look at their stat lines and how much they catch or don't catch the ball in this case versus their running out of the backfield when they are a wide receiver, actually, it is pretty curiously related. Jermaine Kearse had 4 catches for 61 yards, not much else to talk about here. Marshawn Lynch only had 6 carries for 36 yards. You know, he did catch 4 passes out of the backfield for 27 yards. Did not score in this one on the ground, but did score once through the air. Thank God for that. He came through for his fantasy owners with that receiving touchdown. However, this is kind of an important note too. He was a little dinged up with his back. His back spasms kind of flaring up at the end of this game. Not a lot of people knew about that. He dealt with this issue somewhat last year. He was able to play through it, but just keep an eye out there. You know, I don't know if Robert Turbin's on your waiver wire, but might be a guy to look at. And Jay, who's the rookie there again that backs up Lynch and Turbin?
Christine Michael.
Christine Michael, that's right. People kind of forgot about this guy because Lynch looked so good in week 1, but you might want to just kind of have him on the radar again like we were kind of back in early August. On the San Diego side of the ball, Phillip Rivers, pretty good day here, very good day actually, 28 for 37 for 284 yards and 3 touchdowns and no picks. The guy's getting it done. He was supposed to be kind of an on-off again sort of quarterback year after year, but it appears he might be having 2 on seasons if the first 2 weeks are any indication. Danny Woodhead here had 8 carries for 32 yards, a little better than he did last week at averaging 4 yards a carry. You know, Ryan Matthews got hurt in this one, as Ryan Matthews does. At least he did all but last year. He did have 11 carries and 31 yards before he went out of the game. He added 2 catches to that for 26 yards. So it's going to be the Donald Brown, Danny Woodhead show for the next 4 to 5 weeks. So for those of you in PPR leagues that drafted Danny Woodhead, he really came through for people last year. Drafted pretty high for him this year. It looks like he's going to be more involved into this offense. And Donald Brown, I mean, this is why they brought Donald Brown in, frankly. The coaching staff, they brought the guy in just for this reason, and it's bearing out sooner than Ryan Matthews owners wanted here already in week 2. But he's going to be one of the hottest waiver wire pickups. We'll talk about that in a little while, but definitely target him on the waiver wire this week. He had 7 carries for 21 yards in this one. Antonio Gates is doing Antonio Gates type things from 2, 3, 4 years ago, but he's still doing it the first game and the second. He was targeted 7 times, caught all of his targets for 96 yards and 3, yes I said, 3 touchdowns. The guy's killing it, and he's probably killing it on people's benches. Hard to think the guy keeps this up, but you know, what are you going to do here? Keenan Allen targeted 6 times, 5 catches for 55 yards. Eddie Royal 7 catches for 69 yards. So the ball, it was all Antonio Gates and Phillip Rivers in this one. We'll see if Old Man Gates can continue this progress next week, or this week for that matter.
Yeah, you know, you say he was on people's bench, but I'm going to say this. The guy I played in my neighborhood league this week, who absolutely crushed me, had not only Antonio Gates in his lineup, as his flex, mind you, his starting tight end was Jimmy Graham.
Ouch! Wow.
Yeah, dude. It was not a pretty week for me. I was swearing a lot and throwing things. And just wasn't a happy time. So, but we're gonna move on to something here that's actually kind of fun to talk about, and it is the Texans' romp of the Raiders, 30-14. And I'm just gonna go ahead and say it: the biggest story of this game is the breakout wide receiver, J.J. Watt. Yes, that's right. J.J. Watt. J.J. Watt caught a touchdown pass, believe it or not.
He does it all.
He does it all. J.J. Watt is the man. So anyway, obviously Houston won this, and they did not win it on the back of Ryan Fitzpatrick, except for the 2 touchdowns he threw, one of which was a 1-yard TD pass to J.J. Watt, as I just mentioned. He only threw the ball 19 times, had 14 completions for 139 yards. Arian Foster showed up, ladies and gentlemen. 28 carries, 138 yards, and a touchdown. Good job, Arian. Alfred Blue had 11 carries for 40 yards in this one. Andre Johnson, or as I like to call him, Andre, I'm allergic to the end zone Johnson, 6 catches for 74 yards, no touchdowns. Garrett Graham had 1 catch for 26 yards. And DeAndre Hopkins, 3 for 22 and a touchdown. Arian Foster added 2 catches for 12 yards in this one. Moving on to the Raiders side of the ball, Derek Carr, the rookie, 27 for 42, 263 yards, a touchdown, but as rookies will do, he threw two interceptions.
Well, Jay, as rookies will do, or as Eli Manning does.
Well, yeah, but Eli Manning he looks like a little kid anyway, I guess, Anyway, Derek Carr also added 4 carries for 58 yards. Pretty good. McFadden was the lead back here, 12 carries, 37 yards, and a touchdown. On the receiving side of the ball, James Jones, the ad from Green Bay this season, 9 catches, 112 yards, and a touchdown. Killed it. Looks like he's back in Green Bay. Man. Andre Holmes had 5 catches for 45 yards. McFadden added a couple for 31 yards. Jones-Drew was out in this one, so obviously McFadden was going to get the bulk of the carries. Don't really know when Jones-Drew's coming back, but when he does, don't expect McFadden to do even this well, which wasn't all that great. The touchdown kind of saved his day here. So all in all, great day for J.J. Watt and the Texans, and a typical day for the Raiders.
Yeah, Jay, I tell you, if J.J. Watt wants to punt the ball or kick an extra point, God damn it, you're just going to let him because, well, he's J.J. Watt and he's 9 foot tall and 700 pounds, and who's going to say no? Not this guy.
No, I wouldn't.
Not this guy. All right, so we're going to move to another game that was a bit surprising, frankly, because the Jets were all over the Packers in this one until the Packers finally pulled ahead and ended up beating the Jets 31-24 here in this one. Well, Aaron Rodgers, man, Jay, he's good. Newsflash, Aaron Rodgers is a good quarterback, for those of you following at home.
I don't believe you.
Well, his stats prove otherwise. 25 for 42 for 346 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no picks. Now that, Derek Carr, that Eli Manning, even though you have one more Super Bowl ring than he does, is a quarterback. Rushing perspective, frankly, wasn't that great. It's a bit frustrating, too, as an Eddie Lacy owner, a couple leagues. Although it's a pretty tough schedule out of the gate for Eddie Lacy. Didn't do too much better in this one. 13 carries for 43 yards. I believe he had a couple catches. Yeah, 2 catches for 18 yards. So didn't do so hot for a first-round pick, but I think he's going to start turning it around here pretty soon. Aaron Rodgers also rushed the ball, 6 carries for 28 yards. Helps you out a little bit there as he does on the ground. But, man, you know what this game was all about? This was about my man crush. One Mr. Jordy. I am awesome and catch everything thrown my way, Nelson. 9 catches for 209 yards, averaging a whopping 23.2 yards.
You can be my hero, baby.
A catch and a touchdown. The guy is a beast. PPR leagues, he scored you like 41 points, just made your week. Just incredible. Devontae Adams, a guy we'll be mentioning here in the waiver pickups, targeted the second most times at 7, got 5 catches for 50 yards. And Randall Cobb, only had 5 catches for 39 yards, but he was the fortunate recipient of 2 touchdowns in this one, so he came through for his fantasy owners as well. On the depressing Jets side of the ball, Geno Smith, 16 for 32 for 176 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Chris Ivory was in there, 13 carries for 43 yards, only averaging 3.3 yards a carry, but he did get in the end zone to salvage his fantasy day. Outside of that, there's Eric Decker, who is the number 1 there, and he's been proving it. I think he's doing a little better than I thought he would here in New York, having left the bountiful wide receiver haven that it is here in the Mile High City. He had targeted 8 times, had 4 catches for 63 yards and a score. Although he did come up lame in this one with a hamstring, It was the one that he had issues with kind of during training camp and preseason. So keep an eye out for his availability this coming week. And that's it for the Jets and the Packers.
Well, we're going to stay in the NFC North here, and I'm just going to say I really was hoping late in that game that the Jets were going to pull that one out after my Lions had lost. I was, kind of hoping for Green Bay to take another loss there, and another team that was close to losing and I was hoping would lose was the Bears. But they beat the 49ers 28-20 on the back of Mr. Jay Cutler and Brandon Marshall. Cutler, 23 of 34, 176 yards, and four touchdowns. And he only took one sack in this one, folks. That's surprising. Cutler's usually sacked a lot more than that. He also added 5 carries, for 25 yards. Man, he actually had more yards than Matt Forte, who had 12 carries. Matt, what the fuck, dude? What the fuck? All right, so moving on here to Brandon Marshall, who was supposed to be injured, Mr. Adam fucking Schefter, you dick. 5 catches, 48 yards, and 3 of Cutler's 4 touchdowns went to Mr. Marshall. Alshon Jeffrey, who was also supposed to be hurt, 3 catches for 47 yards, and Martellus Bennett, 7 catches, 37 yards, and a touchdown. Forte luckily added 5 catches for 15 yards, or his day would have been a total shitstorm. Moving on to the 49ers side of the ball, Colin Kaepernick. Not a great day, Colin. Not a great day. 21 of 34, 248 yards, 1 touchdown, and 3 interceptions. 3 picks, dude. Come on, man. Come on. All right, he did carry the ball 9 times for 66 yards. Frank Gore, the old man, 13 carries for 63 yards and a touchdown. Carlos Hyde, 4 carries for 0 yards. Ouch. All right. Now, Michael Crabtree finally showed up this week with 7 catches for 82 yards and a touchdown. Vernon Davis, 3 catches for 39 yards. Bolden only caught the ball twice for 34 yards. Stevie Johnson also only caught the ball twice for 26 yards. Frank Gore added 2 catches for 12 yards to his decent day on the ground. And that, my friend, is the Bears 49ers recap.
Yeah, Jay, I just don't think Kaepernick is as elite as Joe Flacco, and we'll leave it at that. All right, so we'll move on to the last game of the week. The Philadelphia Eagles versus the Indianapolis Colts. And Jay, I'm not so surprised that the Eagles are 2-0 as much as I am that the Colts are 0-2. Now, I will say I expected the Colts to lose to my Denver Broncos week 1, but just didn't see them going 0-2, but yet here we find ourselves. And let's explain the reasoning for this. So it really definitely wasn't Andrew Luck, who was 20 of 34, only threw for 172 yards in this one, but 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. And let me tell you, Pep Hamilton, give Andrew Luck the ball. Let him make plays for your offense. He is the best player you have. Let him have the ball. Let him do what he thinks is best with it. Unbelievable. Andrew Luck should have more than those yardage, such a meager yardage, 172 yards. This isn't Geno Smith here, Pep. This is Andrew fucking Luck, all right? Good God. I hope you get fired.
The views and opinions expressed by the commish are solely those of the commish. These views and opinions do not necessarily represent those of the Cushman, the Red Zone Warriors, or the general public. Actually, Pep, yes, they fucking do.
All right, off my soapbox there. So, Trent Richardson, well, Jay, he did boost his average in this one to 3.8 yards a carry versus sub 3 or 3.2, whatever it's been. Looked a little better this week, however, that all went down the shitter when he lost the fumble. So, T-Rich on your way out. Ahmad Bradshaw, who should be getting more of the carries, probably will be moving forward. 13 carries for 70 yards. Now, his average wasn't 3.8, Jay. If you're asking, it was 5.4. Why, you ask? Well, it's because he's a better runner, Pep. God, he's a better runner. Andrew Luck's a better runner, for God's sakes. Get T-Wrench out of there. Fuck. All right. T.Y. Hilton targeted the most this week than last week over Reggie Wayne, 11-7. He had 6 catches for 65 yards. Reggie Wayne didn't do so much, unfortunately, for me in my daily leagues where I had Wayne in a couple. Only 3 for 28. Ahmad Bradshaw, well, he caught 5 balls for 26 yards. And 2 touchdowns. Get him in your lineup, folks. He is a flex play at the very least, and quite possibly an RB2 as we get to week 4 and beyond, and the bye weeks start coming into play. All that being said, Jay, they still lost because Philadelphia, they scored more points. Let's see. In this one, you had Nick Foles, 21 for 37, 331 yards, a touchdown and interception. Now, I will say it wasn't because he threw down the field 331 yards. It's because little Darren Sproles caught the ball and ran for half of those yards at 7 catches for 152 yards. LaShawn McCoy had 4 catches for 23 yards. And on the ground, LaShawn McCoy definitely had the most carries. He had 20 carries for almost 80 yards at 4.0 yards per carry and a rushing touchdown. So you know what? If McCoy gets 80 yards, a touchdown, 4 catches for 23 yards, you will take that all day. But Darren Sproles had the day. He stole the show. He, frankly, crushed it, approaching 200 all-purpose yards, a touchdown. The guy's a little beast. But again, folks, I think this is more of a sell-high candidate. Not that he won't be productive. This is just, if you're going to sell high, this is the highest we're going to see from Darren Sproles this season would be my guess. All right, and that wraps it up for the game-by-game discussion for Week 2. Look forward to doing that again next week. But before we leave you today, we'd be remiss if we didn't go into the hot waiver wire and warm, I suppose, waiver wire pickups for you guys making your waiver wire pickups this evening. And we will start, as we do, at quarterback. So, Jay, what are we looking for at quarterbacks this week?
Well, the obvious one for everybody, since RG3 went down with his ankle. Now, obviously, he's not dealing with a fractured ankle according to the MRI exam and doesn't think he needs surgery, but it's still 6 to 8 weeks, according to several surgeons, that he's going to be out. So that means that Kirk Cousins will be starting at quarterback for an extended period of time, as he did in relief in Week 2. As we said earlier, 22 of 33 for 250 yards and 2 touchdowns and no interceptions. So Cousins, actually, I honestly believe Cousins is probably a better pocket passer than RG3 is. He's more accurate. I think he's got a little bit better head on his shoulders as far as not freaking out and just trying to run the ball all the time. So now we got to mention here, though, also Deshaun Jackson suffered a sprained AC joint, so he could miss some time, and that adds to Jordan Reed already being out. So this is going to be an interesting deal here. Last week we thought Pierre Garçon was going to get a lot of targets when RG3 went down, and Deshaun went down. We thought that Kirk Cousins was going to rely heavily on the number 1 receiver there, and he did not. And my guess is probably because without Jordan Reed and Deshaun Jackson on the field, that Pierre Garçon has 2 safeties and a defensive back up his ass all day long. Now I'm going to mention a little bit here on Kirk Cousins' schedule. He's at Philly, then New York is in Washington, and then Tennessee in Washington and at Dallas. So they've got a pretty decent schedule coming up as far as teams they might be able to put some points up on. So Kirk Cousins, put him on your wish list if you are in need of a quarterback. Obviously, especially if RG3 went down, go ahead and grab him. He's not going to be a bad play. The guy doesn't make a lot of mistakes, and he will put points up for you every week. And that is all I have for Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, the only quarterback that I'll mention here, and again, this is probably for deeper leagues, or if you're the RG3 owner and had nothing else, and most people in your leagues have two quarterbacks or whatnot. Geno Smith's someone to look at. He has improved since last year. He did have the Packers on the ropes in week 2 in Lambeau, as we just got through talking about. His completion rate's not great. He's never going to be a guy who throws for 300 yards, like a Manning. That would be at least a Peyton Manning, or Matt Ryan or somebody like that. But he'll throw you about maybe 200 yards. Is probably his ceiling typically. Might throw a touchdown, might throw a pick. But he runs the ball, and he ran for a 1-yard touchdown last week. And he's actually standing out in that capacity because the guys who were accustomed to running the ball, these running quarterbacks, well, they're frankly not running the ball. I mean, they're really not. Geno Smith and Alex Smith, the only common thing they have besides their last names is the fact that the only two quarterbacks in the NFL actually getting running production right now. Cam Newton's not doing it. He's just back this first week. RG3 is clearly not going to be doing it anymore. So he can get you some rushing production, which is what you're going to be hoping and praying for if you have to start him in a given week. The only other guys I'll mention real fast, this is just to kind of get on your radar, again, for deeper leagues or injury issues, bye week issues, is Blake Bortles and Teddy Bridgewater. These guys are going to be taking over these roles in their offenses here sooner rather than later. And in both of their cases, there's a very good chance that they're going to make their offensive weapons around them better. So keep an eye out for them. Just put that in the back of your mind. Flag them, in the software for whatever league you're working through. Just keep an eye on them for bye weeks and such moving forward. All right, so Jay, we're going to move on to the running backs and talk about one of the biggest waiver wire pickups for sure of the week, and especially for Jamal Charles owners.
Yes. Mr. Niall Davis had a great week, put up some ridiculous points, something like 28 points, somewhere around there. We all know Jamal sadly left early with a high ankle sprain, or as Andy Reid put it, high ankle sprain components. What the fuck does that even mean? So Davis carried 22 times for 79 yards, had 2 touchdowns, added 6 catches for 26 yards on 9 targets. The Chiefs are kind of hopeful here that Charles won't miss a ton of time with the ankle injury. But if you have Jamal, you should have already owned Niall Davis. I'm just saying that because this is kind of what Jamal does. He didn't do it last year, but in years prior, this is exactly what he's done. And Davis is going to have a huge role if Charles misses a lot of time. So he is definitely a guy you can feel confident in putting at least in a flex RB2 spot, and you should be targeting him on your waiver wire this week.
Yeah, and just to give the listener some perspective, for me, if I'm the Jamal Charles owner and did not draft Niles Davis, did not pick him up after week 1, and you have a $100 waiver wire fab budget, I'm telling you got to spend half your money on the guy. You just do. You can't go, and he could be out a week or 2, could be out 4 weeks. We really don't know yet. You should have drafted the guy. He was the number 1, above all, hands down, guy to pick up, to back up the stud running back this year, the handcuff to get. So you're going to have to pay your dues here and pay for this guy for sure. All right, let's talk about another, well, he's really not so much a handcuff per se, and that would be Terrence West. If Terrence West is still available on your waiver wire, which he should not be, he should be owned in all leagues, along with Isaiah Crowell. But on the slim chance that he's not, we thought we would mention him. Ben Tate, of course, went down with a knee injury. Will definitely not be back, I'm sure. It's looking like until after their week 4 bye. This guy is getting it done, and he's doing it well. He does have Isaiah Crowell behind him getting some carries too, but Terrence West is getting the vast majority of the carries, of the touches. He scored a touchdown last week. He's catching the ball out of the backfield. And he's playing, I think he was in there for over 65% of the snaps as opposed to Crowell only getting 37%. So we'll see when Ben Tate comes back. If any of these impatient owners dropped Ben Tate after the injury, definitely look at picking him up. and we'll see how this pans out when Ben Tate gets back. But in the meantime, you got to win each and every week. So pick up Terrence West if he is on your waiver wire.
Moving on, Donald Brown, San Diego. Ryan Matthews went down with a sprained MCL, and he will be out 4 to 5 weeks. This means Brown will likely be the lead back. And since they specifically brought him in to do just that when Ryan Matthews went down, which they knew he would. Now, obviously, Danny Woodhead is still there. He's still going to be the primary receiving back for San Diego. So he's a guy to own in PPR leagues. But Donald Brown would be a real nice pickup. He does know the offense. He has dealt with the general manager before. So, obviously Brown's going to be available. Go get him if you need him. He's probably not much more really than a flex play. He doesn't have the talent of Ryan Matthews, and I think they're going to lean a little bit more on Danny Woodhead with Matthews down. But if you need a running back, go ahead and grab Donald Brown.
Yeah, absolutely. He's definitely one of the top running backs to pick up this week, and it is nice at least when we know that the starters, we have a good timetable for when they're going to be out for how long. And so this is a 4 to 5 week injury for Ryan Matthews. So it's not just a one-hit wonder. You're going to get him for a week. You're going to get him and get some consistency out of him. Mike can help you out through some bye weeks as well. So the next guy we mentioned briefly prior to, we were talking about the Saints game, and that's Kyrie Robinson. Mark Ingram, man, was just running like his ass is on fire. The end of last season, the beginning of this season looks so good, but he's out for at least a month with a hand injury. Obviously broke some bones there. Kind of need that hand to play football. So this opens the door nicely for Kyrie. He did run it 8 times, like we mentioned, for 31 yards in week 2. Again, this is going to be the Kyrie Pierre Thomas show. Pierre Thomas is going to be even more involved, I believe, than he was before. He wasn't really all that involved in week 2 as much as he was in week 1. They're both going to have a much larger role here. But Kyrie could end up being more of the goal line back, like Mark Ingram was prior to his departure. So if he's out there, definitely throw some fab money at him. Put him in your priority list if you're just playing regular waivers, and take a look at Kyrie Robinson this week.
Yeah, definitely do that. He's not available in any of my leagues, unfortunately. A guy that is, on the other hand, Bobby Rainey in Tampa Bay. The team held starting running back Doug Martin out of week 2 because of a knee. And there's nothing to really ensure that he's going to be ready for week 3 in Atlanta. They think he's going to be back, but if he's not, Bobby Rainey did pretty good. He carried 22 times, 144 yards, had 3 catches for 30 yards against a pretty good Rams front 7. So Martin owners, you should obviously pick up Rainey if he's still available in your league. He's going to get more opportunities. I mean, he did put up a good showing, and let's be honest here, even when Doug Martin is healthy, he's not really all that impressive. So Bobby Rainey could end up being, a much better option in fantasy than Doug Martin, even if Doug Martin's healthy. So go ahead, throw Bobby Rainey on your wish list, see if you can get him, and win some leagues.
Well, and I will say that Doug Martin did practice somewhat this week. He's officially listed as questionable to play tomorrow. Again, guys, this is the early Thursday game that these guys are taking part of. If I was a Doug Martin owner and he was my RB1, which he likely could have been, maybe RB2, I'd feel a little sketchy about it because I don't know how many carries the guy's going to get, how well he's going to do based on his play. However, if I picked up Bobby Rainey or I do tonight, I'd feel pretty damn comfortable playing Bobby Rainey in a flex spot Thursday because even if Doug Martin plays and even if he technically gets the start, he's definitely not healthy. He's not been playing well, and Bobby's coming off an incredible week 2 where he just dominated it in every aspect of the game. So I would feel pretty comfortable playing him this Thursday evening. All right, so that's it for the running backs. We're going to move on to the potential wide receivers to pick up this week. And we're going to start with Brian Quick in St. Louis. So we kind of poo-pooed this last week, called him a flash in the pan. It was probably the right call at the time. but we get more and more information as the weeks move on, and you just can't explain away the amount of targets this guy's getting in St. Louis, regardless of who's throwing him the pigskin. So, man, the guy caught 7 passes for 74 yards. He's definitely the #1 target for Austin Davis, that is, or whoever's in there at the time. Yeah. But, man, he just has shown no trust for anybody else, no chemistry with anybody else, especially Kenny Britt, because Kenny Britt's an asshole. So, again, Brian Quick, especially in PPR leagues, folks, this is a guy apparently worth a pickup. If he's going to get that many looks every game, if he's going to catch 5 to 8 balls a game, he's going to average probably 70, 80 yards. That's worth flex play for certain.
Yes, it definitely is. I'm actually looking at him in my neighborhood league. Hopefully, I'll.
Jay, are you looking at him in the Red Zone Warrior League?
That's none of your goddamn business.
Listeners want to
know. That's none of their goddamn business either. Only because you're listening.
Yes.
So, moving on, Cleveland, Andrew Hawkins. Now, quarterback Brian Hoyer needed to throw the ball to somebody in week 2, and Cameron's out of the lineup. Josh Gordon is still not back. Fuck you, Roger Goodell, you stupid fucking idiot. So, Hawkins was usually the guy to go to against the Saints. He caught 6 of his 12 targets for 70 yards. He has now 22 targets in 2 games, which is actually the 4th most in the NFL thus far. Cameron's still in limbo with his shoulder injury, and Josh Gordon is out for at least 8 more games. Again, fuck you, Goodell. So Hawkins should be a good guy to have. He's going to be heavily targeted going forward. If you need wide receiver help or you just want some depth, Andrew Hawkins is a good guy to go ahead and pick up. Rob?
Yeah, they're saying Cameron does have a chance to play this week, potentially. He's going to be one of those questionable guys at game time. But regardless, Hawkins has done it again for the 2nd week in a row. And even if Cameron's in there, it doesn't mean you should shy away from Andrew Hawkins. So that's a good call there. All right, so we're going to move over and surprisingly, shockingly talk about the Oakland Raiders. Is there a guy? The Oakland Raiders that's worth a pickup?
What?
Well, it's probably Jay because he actually came from a good team and just found himself, probably got paid the most to go to the Raiders. That being said, James Jones is looking like the #1 wide receiver in Oakland, and normally that doesn't say much, but he's actually producing to the extent that he might be worth a flex play. So we've kind of been trying to figure out who this guy is going to be. And surprise, surprise, it is James Jones. Derek Carr threw it to him early and often in week 2, finished with 9 catches for 112 yards and a TD. The most important thing here, folks, is that he got 14 freaking targets. And I believe he scored 2 weeks in a row on top of that. Anybody who's targeted 14 times, you put the Cushman out there for the Lions. If he's targeted 14 times, he's at least going to be on my bench. I'm going to be rooting for him. But
dude, look, if I'm getting targeted 14 times in the Lions, that's not going to happen because after I make my first catch and get hit by one of those behemoths, I'm going to be in the hospital.
Yeah, well, we'll send you some cards and flowers. But again, 14 targets, James Jones, man, he's looking like the guy there, and even if a rookie's throwing him the ball, he's putting up some numbers that, you just can't explain away. So if you're hurting at wide receiver, maybe a little sketched out on playing Roddy White this Thursday with the hamstring, like I'm sure Cushman is, you might want to take a look at James Jones this week.
Yeah, not somebody I'm actually looking at because there's better options where I'm at, but I would if there weren't. Because, yes, Roddy White is sketching me out. We're going to move on to Devontae Adams in Green Bay. This is a rookie from Fresno State, and he's already passed Jarrett Boykin on the depth chart. That does not surprise me. Boykin's never really impressed me all that much. He was targeted 7 times in Week 2, caught 5 passes for 50 yards, and the Packers went over the Jets. And he nearly had his first NFL touchdown, and perhaps should have. But an official spotted the ball inches from the goal line after Adams made a nice catch near the pylon in heavy traffic. Boykin was targeted only 3 times on Sunday and had 1 catch for 6 yards. The Packers are facing Lions, Bears, Vikings, all divisional
Oh my.
opponents the next 3 games. So I'm just going to go ahead and say this. The studs on the Packers I would play. Divisional games, especially in the NFC North, for some reason, are usually pretty freaking brutal and somewhat defensive affairs. So be a little bit careful with Devontae Adams for the next 3 weeks, but he does seem to be getting some passes thrown his way. Definitely somebody you might want to keep your eye on at least. I don't know if I'd pick him up right now, but definitely somebody to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I agree with that. The only reason we're even mentioning him is because Aaron Rodgers, of course, is throwing him the ball. And on top of that, they've clearly have no tight end they can count on in that offense. So usually a third wide receiver is a bit sketchy, but we've seen it on the Broncos. We've seen it on the Saints. And Green Bay is definitely good enough to make him relevant, especially when they have no tight end they can count on. So definitely worth keeping an eye on. All right, so the last wide receiver we're going to talk about today that we think is even potentially worth a pickup is one Mohamed Sanu from Cincinnati. Man, if you saw the guy play last week, he did it all. He completed a 50-yard pass to a teammate, and he later caught a 76-yard touchdown from Andy Dalton. He finished 3 for 84 and a touchdown receiving. Of course, he threw one as well on only 4 targets. So the guy did a lot on a few targets. Of course, A.J. Green did go down in this one with a toe injury, but they find themselves pretty thin there in Cincinnati. Tyler Eifert and Marvin Jones, of course, were also out, so Sanu is going to be heavily targeted, and there's a decent chance that A.J. Green will not play again this week. So if you're in deeper leagues like Cushman and I are in one of our FFPC high-stakes leagues, we have Sanu sitting on our bench when we have 2 flex positions. There could be a lot worse options out there than Sanu this week. All right, so that's it for the wide receivers. We're going to move on to the last category of the afternoon, and that, of course, would be tight ends.
Yes, and you can't talk about tight ends this week without talking about Delanie Walker. Now, in my neighborhood league, my next-door neighbor was ecstatic. I mean, he picked up Delanie Walker just for the hell of it because he had Jordan Cameron actually out, so he needed a tight end to play this week, and holy shit. Delanie was the number 2 receiving option in this offense, and Walker plays well with him. He had 10 catches, 142 yards, and a touchdown on 14 targets. Now, his 141 yards were a career high, and he tied his career high with 10 catches. He should probably be owned in most formats. He'll be a mid number 2 tight end most weeks, and like he did this week, he could come through with a big game for you. So if you're a Jordan Cameron owner or a Jordan Reed owner, you might want to go ahead and grab you some Delanie Walker if he's still on your waiver wire. I would.
Yeah, there's worse options out there. I'm not sure that I'm necessarily jumping all in on this guy, but he has looked good through 2 weeks. Jake Locker is the guy throwing him the ball, but he does target him early and often. The interesting thing about Walker is that if you've seen him play, the guy runs away from people. I think he's a converted wide receiver because he's huge, but he runs away from defensive backs, and that's an odd thing to see for a tight end in the NFL, but he's getting it done. So, all right, and as we mentioned when we talked about the Giants earlier, there's a big old fella out there named Larry Donnell. And you might say, who? And I would say, I don't know either, except for he's putting up numbers, and it's thrown in front of my face, and I've seen him doing it on TV, and it's really weird. But he's killing it. Week 2, another solid showing, catching 7 passes for 81 yards on 9 targets. Man, Eli Manning, they apparently eat lunch and dinner together. They're sharing Christmas cards. Their wives are going out shopping together. I don't know what the deal is here, but Eli likes himself some Larry, likes himself some Donald, and he's always liked himself the tight end. So if you're hurting, as the Cushman mentioned, if you're a Jordan Reed owner or Jordan Cameron owner, so forth, there could be worse options out there than Larry Donnell or Delaney Walker, so keep an eye out for him.
Yeah, that's true, especially what you said about Eli liking his tight ends. If you remember, Brandon Myers, when he was in New York, looked really, really good, and then he left New York, and, well, now you say Brandon who? So that is the truth. Eli Manning does like to throw the ball to his tight end quite a bit. Moving on, this is a guy that we have talked about more than once on this show, Mr. Travis Kelce of the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yes.
Head coach Andy Reid got Kelce more involved in Week 2 after not using him enough in Week 1, and Kelce rewarded Mr. Reid by posting 4 catches on 6 targets for a team-best 81 yards. Kelce should probably be owned in pretty much all the formats because it's only a matter of time until Reid and quarterback Alex Smith start to use Kelce like the number 3 passing option that he is. He should be throwing the ball more. This guy can run. He can catch. He does not drop the ball very much. So, come on, Kansas City. I got him sitting on my bench in my neighborhood league. I need you to use him, for God's sake.
Yeah, Jay, when an offense boasts Dwayne Bowe as their wide receiver 1, you know you need yourself some Travis Kelce. All right, so that wraps it up this week for the waiver wire information. Go through all the major positions there for you to take a look at this week. If your team is hurting, or maybe you're 0-2 and you're dying out there, you need some help, or you're 2-0 and you're just trying to keep it going, there's some good names for you to look at there on the waiver wire. So, Jay, we're going to do what we do every week, and we're going to talk about some questions on Reddit, some who to start type questions, some situations, possible trade issues people are at. So what do you have for us this week on Reddit?
All right. Well, our first question this week comes from, and I'm going to tell you, bud, this is the reason that you're on this show right now. Your question is on this show. Username Penis Sword. Penis Sword. Yes.
Well, we are explicit on iTunes, so just feel free.
Yes. So Penis Sword wants to know, would you consider dropping Steven Jackson for Niall Davis? My league has a 5-person limit for running backs, so I'd have to drop a running back to get him. Rob, I'll let you take this one.
Well, first of all, I'd love to know if he is a Jamal Charles owner, and if he was, I would say abso-fucking-lutely drop S-Jax in a freaking heartbeat. My guess is because Reddit people are pretty bright, and he probably wouldn't be asking this if that was the case. So I'm going to assume for this question, Jay, that he is not an owner. In that case, I would probably ask him what his record is. You know, is he 0-2? What's his running back situation? He doesn't provide that information to us. He doesn't give us the other 4 RBs on his squad. But Niles Davis is in all likelihood a top 15 back until Jamal Charles comes back, which he ultimately will. So I don't know if this is a depth play or not, but I don't have a whole lot of faith, in Steven Jackson's ability anymore, nor his ability to stay on the field. So in all likelihood, if it wasn't going to cost me an arm and a leg on the waiver budget, you know, I'm not going to spend $50 out of my $100 waiver budget on Niles Davis if I'm not the Jamal owner just to drop Steven Jackson. But I may not have too much difficulties doing just that.
Yeah, I feel the same way. You know, I'm like you, Rob. I do not have a ton of faith in Steven Jackson. He's kind of old and he's just a plotter. You know, he'll put up points now and then, but not as often as you'd like. So, yeah, if you just need the depth, go for it. But if you're getting rid of Steven Jackson, I'm guessing you drafted him early enough that he's probably your RB2. So that might not be something you want to do because, as the commish said, Jamal will be coming back. Our next question comes from user Detzel. He is in a half-point PPR league, and he says, I'd trade Toby Gerhart, Randall Cobb, and the Bengals DST for Le'Veon Bell and Mike Wallace. And he lists his current team below. He's got Cutler, Antonio Brown, Randall Cobb, DeMarco Murray, Gerhart, Jimmy Graham, Eric Decker, Cincinnati's D. His bench is Russell Wilson, Bernard Pierce, Woodhead, Calvin Benjamin, Josh Gordon, and Matt Asiata. So, Rob, would you do that? Would you trade Toby Gerhart, Randall Cobb, and the Bengals for Le'Veon Bell and Mike Wallace?
Jay, I would jump out of my seat and run to the computer and hit the accept button or the offer button as soon as possible. Toby Gerhart, I mean, Randall Cobb is very good, of course, but Le'Veon Bell is the best player in this mix, hands down. You're getting Mike Wallace, who has actually had two very good weeks, week 1 and 2. Toby Gerhart, again, he's a guy who needs to be healthy to even and get a ton of volume to even produce, and we're not seeing that right now. I could give a rip about the Bengals defense unless it's some sort of elevated scoring. So it's basically, to me, Gerhart and Cobb for Le'Veon Bell and Mike Wallace. I think that's a very good play here. I mean, if you're running out of the gates every week with DeMarco Murray and Le'Veon Bell as your RB 1 and 2, you still have Antonio Brown as your wide receiver 1. Granted, he's not very deep at wide receiver. He does have Kelvin Benjamin. That definitely helps. But looking at this, I think that's something I would definitely do if I could pull that off.
Yeah, I agree. I do the same thing. Just for Le'Veon Bell alone, the guy is killing it this year. He's going to be, at least a top 10 running back, if not higher than that. So push accept. Our next question comes from Kayvon820. And he says, okay, so I have Dwayne Allen and Dennis Pitta as my tight ends with Delanie Walker on the wire. My running backs are Alfred Morris, Terrence West, Fred Jackson, Ryan Matthews, who's obviously out. Should I target Delanie Walker with my wire priority, Niall Davis, or Bobby Rainey? PPR league, and input is much appreciated. Rob?
Well, as we mentioned before, don't freak out about the Dennis Pitta situation. I think that was an anomaly last week. I think he's fine. I know obviously Dwayne Allen and Pitta both had off weeks, which is probably why this Reddit user is bringing this up. But again, not only are we not super high on Delanie Walker that he's going to be able to keep this up, I also feel very good still about Dennis Pitta and Dwayne Allen. This is a good example, folks, about kind of not freaking out about what happened in a given week. I would hang tight with Dwayne Allen, Dennis Pitta. You're totally fine in your tight end position, and I would definitely target Niles Davis or Bobby Rainey over him in a heartbeat. And that, again, just depends on your situation. Depends on if you're needing a short-term fix or maybe a longer-term fix, and whether or not you're the Jamal Charles owner or not.
If I was going to drop anybody here, it would be Dwayne Allen, and I would probably drop him for Bobby Rainey or Niall Davis. I would not go after Delanie. Agree here with the commish fully. So the next question comes from user 369152439.
That's original.
That is, actually, it probably is original. So he wants to know, should he drop Victor Cruz for Lamar Miller? His other wide receivers are Mike Wallace, Andre Johnson, Sammy Watkins, and his running backs are Forte, Stacy, Morris, and Rainey. He knows he doesn't really need more depth, but he's trying to prepare for the future, and he thinks he can get good trade value for him in the future for Miller. Cruz has been terrible, other than Manning isn't great. So thoughts on that one?
Yeah. It's hard to say on this one. I can't foresee Victor Cruz putting up poor numbers like this continually through the season. That being said, Andre Johnson's going to get it done in a PPR league. Sammy Watkins showed something last week for the first time. He might have some decent value for a rookie moving forward. But again, he is very deep at running back, as you said. Forte, Stacy, Morris, and Rainey is pretty deep. First of all, I wouldn't try to. It's hard to sell Victor Cruz right now because of his performances of late. But dropping him is probably a touch too early for me at this point. What do you think, Jay?
Yeah, it's a little bit premature to drop Victor Cruz.
Trying to be nice, but yeah.
A little premature. You're gonna blow your load a little too soon there. 369152493. So definitely don't drop Victor Cruz for Lamar Miller. Your team looks pretty damn solid. And really, I don't know that you'll get a lot of trade value for Lamar Miller. Noshawn's going to come back at some point. And Lamar, he's okay. He's not a world beater by any means. So I would definitely hold on to Victor Cruz for at least a few more weeks. Yeah, don't drop Victor Cruz, man.
Well, and I'm actually shocked. My first question should have been, why the hell is Lamar Miller on the waiver wire?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, what is this, a six-man league? That's just ridiculous.
If it's not a six-man league, can you send me and the commission invite to join next year?
Yeah, please.
We would love nothing more than to take your money.
I mean, you got Lamar Miller. You got Noshawn out for 4 to 5 weeks. Lamar Miller is going to be the bell cow there for over a month. He's a RB2 every stinking week until Noshawn gets back. So the fact that he's on waiver wire or whatever is ridiculous. I would try to drop somebody for him. It just wouldn't be Victor Cruz in all reality. So, all right, well, that's it for the Reddit questions, and that is it for our show today, ladies and gentlemen. On the next show, we'll be discussing Week 4 waiver wire grabs, along with helping you decide who to start, who to sit, and maybe what trades to do or not do. In the meantime, go to redzonewarriors.com, where you can watch all previous episodes, see our rankings, and subscribe to and rate us via iTunes. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter and tweet us all of your fantasy football questions at RedZoneWarriors. So for the Cushman, I am Rob the Commish Smith, and we'll catch you next time.